Hey everyone. This is hard to write, and honestly, I still don't know how I'm holding it together. I'm not here for pity, I just need to tell someone. Maybe to make sense of it, maybe so someone else can learn from what I missed. I'm a 41-year-old husband and father. My wife, Claire, 38F, and I have been married for 13 years. We have 2 kids, our daughter is 11, our son just turned 8. For most of our marriage, I thought we were decent. Not perfect, not movie script passionate, but real. We had ups and downs. We argued, we made up, we held each other down through family deaths, career changes, health scares. That had to mean something, right? 2 years ago, things started to shift. Nothing dramatic, no cheating, no big betrayal, just coldness. Silence between dinner and bedtime. Less touching. More scrolling on phones. That slow, invisible erosion of closeness that nobody tells you how to fix. Claire suggested therapy after a particularly bad fight about, of all things, groceries. I remember her standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, and saying, "We're broken. And I can't do this version of us anymore." I agreed. I wanted to fix it. I wanted us back. Enter Damien, our couple's therapist. Now, I'll admit, the guy seemed good. Charismatic, calm voice, thoughtful insights, that practiced empathy that makes you feel like you're in safe hands. Claire was instantly comfortable with him. Too comfortable, if I think about it now. He specialized in relationship reintegration, helping couples rediscover intimacy, understand emotional disconnects, rewire patterns. Fancy phrases that made us feel hopeful. At first, things were promising. Damien asked thoughtful questions, gave us weekly exercises, even texted us little mindfulness prompts. He encouraged honesty, emotional vulnerability, the whole 9 yards. I actually liked going to sessions. But it didn't take long before the balance started to tilt. The focus of every session began shifting toward my emotional rigidity, my controlling nature, my need for structured affection. He never outright blamed me, but it became clear who the damaged partner was. And Claire. She ate it up. She'd nod thoughtfully, glance at me like I was a disappointing project she was being forced to reassemble. I'd say something like, "I feel like I'm walking on eggshells at home," and Damien would reframe it. "So perhaps it's not about eggshells, but the expectation that the kitchen be silent?" Like, what? At one point I joked about feeling double-teamed in therapy. Damien gave a tight smile. Claire didn't even laugh. She just said, "Maybe that's how I've felt for 10 years. Those words lodged themselves into my chest like splinters. I started dreading the sessions, not because I didn't want to grow, but because I felt like I was entering a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided. Still, I told myself this was what growth looked like, uncomfortable, messy, uneven. Meanwhile, at home, Claire began to change. She got a new haircut. Started going to yoga again. Started journaling, reading self-awareness books. She was becoming new. Which sounds great on paper, but in reality, it felt like she was evolving without me, like she was growing into someone who didn't need a husband anymore. She also started mentioning Damien outside of sessions. Damien says I need to rediscover joy. Damien thinks I'm holding on to childhood wounds. Damien told me that emotional validation isn't the same as people-pleasing. He went from therapist to prophet. She'd bring up his insights in casual conversation like he was some kind of guru whispering wisdom through her. One night, after the kids were asleep, I asked her, genuinely, "Do you think this therapy is helping us, or helping you?" She just stared at me and said, "Do you even want me to be happy?" It wasn't a question. It was a threat. That was the moment I felt the ground shift. I didn't have evidence. I didn't know where it was heading. But I knew something was wrong. I could feel it. I just had no idea how wrong it really was. "Alright, here we go." After that night, the one where she hit me with, do you even want me to be happy? I started paying closer attention. Not snooping. Not accusing. Just noticing. Claire's demeanor was changing in ways that felt off. She stopped asking me to come to some of our therapy sessions. Claimed they were individual processing appointments that Damien said were necessary for her emotional restructuring. Sounded legit, at first. But then came the coincidences. Like the time she forgot her therapy appointment was cancelled, and said she was at the office when Damien had already posted on his professional page that he was out of town for training. Or the time I picked up her dry cleaning and found an expensive silk blouse I'd never seen before, definitely not something you wear to a therapy session or yoga class. Still, I didn't say anything. I convinced myself I was being paranoid, that I was jealous of her rediscovering herself while I felt like a background character in my own marriage. Then I made a mistake. A big one. One Saturday morning, she left her phone on the nightstand while she showered. Now let me be clear, I never go through her stuff. Ever. But the night before, she'd been giggling at her screen like a teenager, and when I asked what was so funny, she flipped it over and mumbled, just a meme. So yeah, curiosity got the better of me. I picked up the phone. It was unlocked. I didn't even have to try. I didn't go digging far, just opened her messages app. There was no Damien in the contact list. But I recognized the number from when he once texted us a reschedule. Only now it was saved under DT. What followed was, well, it broke something in me. The messages weren't sexual in the way you'd expect, no nudes, no graphic sexts. They were worse. They were intimate. Deeply emotional, personal, addictive. I still feel your breath on my neck. It's messing with my head. I wish I could fall asleep next to you just once without looking at the clock. I know this isn't what we planned. But when I'm with you, it's the only time I feel real. There were even a few photos. Not sexual, just intimate. Her feet resting on a couch I didn't recognize. A half-full glass of wine next to two plates. Her hand in someone else's, fingers interlocked. I stood there, phone in hand, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It wasn't a misinterpreted friendship. This was a full-blown emotional affair, probably physical too, with the man who was supposed to be helping us fix our marriage. I took screenshots. I airdropped them to my laptop without a second thought. Not out of spite, out of survival. Out of self-respect. Then I placed her phone right back where she left it. She came out of the shower, towel around her hair, humming some song. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted pancakes. I told her sure. I ate breakfast like a ghost that morning. Watching her flip pancakes like she hadn't just lit a match to our life. I didn't confront her that day. I couldn't. I needed time to breathe. To think. But I knew. I knew. And she had no idea I was done playing dumb. I gave it 2 days. 2 full days of pretending everything was fine. I went to work. I made dinner. I read bedtime stories to the kids. I even sat through one more therapy session with her and Damien, and let me tell you, that hour nearly destroyed me. Sitting across from the guy who was sleeping with my wife, nodding thoughtfully as he dissected my emotional availability. It took everything in me not to explode right there in that office. But I waited. I planned. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday night. The kids were asleep. She was curled up on the couch scrolling through her phone, sipping herbal tea like she hadn't just ripped our marriage apart behind my back. She looked peaceful. Relaxed. And in that moment, I realized she thought I'd never find out. She thought she had covered her tracks. I walked into the room, laptop in hand, and sat across from her. No emotion. No drama. "Claire," I said. "I want to show you something." She looked up, confused. A little guarded. I opened the folder I'd created, UNDT. Her face turned white before the first photo even loaded. I watched her eyes dart from image to image, the texts, the photos, the message history. Her mouth parted slightly. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then finally. "You went through my phone." That was her opening line. Not denial. Not apology. Accusation. I nodded. "Yeah. I did." She scoffed. "Wow." She stood up, paced a little, then turned to me. "This is such a violation of trust. I can't believe you." "No," I cut her off. "Don't you dare talk to me about trust. You brought this man into our marriage, you told him things I didn't even know about you. You laid your soul out for him, Claire. And then you let him ing touch you." She flinched at that. A flicker of guilt? Or just discomfort that I'd said it out loud? Then she started crying. Big, dramatic, performative tears. It wasn't supposed to happen. He listened. He understood me. He didn't judge me. "You mean he agreed with you," I said. "He echoed whatever made you feel better about turning me into the villain." She didn't deny it. "I didn't mean to fall for him," she said. "It just happened. I was lost. You were so cold back then. You didn't even notice how unhappy I was." There it was. The deflection. The classic "if you had just loved me better" defense. "You chose to lie," I told her. Week after week. "You sat across from me in his office while he took notes on how to dismantle me, and you just let it happen. You paid him to help destroy your marriage." Her crying stopped. Just like that. She wiped her eyes and said, "Maybe this marriage was already destroyed. Maybe this is what finally made me realize that." That moment. That's when it all clicked for me. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She was justifying it. She had already rewritten the narrative in her head. She was the victim, I was the cold, oblivious husband, and Damien was her lifeline. "I want you out," I said. "Tonight. I don't care where you go. But you don't sleep under this roof." She looked stunned. "What about the kids?" I shook my head. "They'll stay here. We'll figure out the rest later. But you're not playing house anymore." She packed a bag in silence. No more tears. No more excuses. Just cold calculation behind her eyes, like she was already preparing the next move in a long, ugly game. And I knew, this was just the beginning. She left that night. Didn't slam the door. Didn't cry. Didn't even look back. She packed a small overnight bag, texted someone the moment she got to the driveway, "Gee, I wonder who," and drove off into the night like she was heading to a retreat, not walking away from her husband and kids. The silence after was brutal. I sat in the kitchen, lights off, the hum of the fridge the only sound. That numb, buzzing kind of heartbreak settled in, the one where your mind keeps trying to make sense of it, replaying every conversation, every memory, wondering where the cracks started and how you missed them widening beneath your feet. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the intimacy of it. The fact that the person I shared everything with had sat across from me every week for a year, nodding and pretending to fix what she was actively breaking. And Damien, the licensed professional, the healer, the man we trusted, was using my vulnerability as a roadmap to get closer to my wife. I didn't sleep that night. At around 5 a.m., I sat on the edge of our bed, watching the sun bleed into the room, and I cried. Not just a few tears, I broke down. Sobs I didn't recognize coming from my own body. Grief so heavy it felt like it belonged to someone else. I didn't go to work that day. I couldn't. I called in sick and spent the morning cleaning the house like a madman. Scrubbing floors, folding laundry, rearranging bookshelves. Anything to stop myself from picking up my phone and texting her. Or him. Or both. The kids woke up around 7. They asked where mommy was. I lied. I said she had to leave for a work trip last minute. I couldn't bring myself to drop a truth bomb on their morning cereal. And of course, she didn't call. Didn't check in. Didn't even send a good morning message to the kids. Cold, like we were just items she'd left behind in the move. Later that afternoon, her sister called me, not to apologize or ask how I was doing, but to say, "Claire told me you kicked her out. What the hell is going on?" So now I was the bad guy. The unstable husband who snapped. I told her the truth, in one sentence: she's been having an affair with our therapist. Silence on the line. Then a whispered, "Jesus Christ." She didn't argue after that. She just said, "I'll make sure the kids see her this weekend." The fallout had begun. Claire didn't try to deny it. Didn't even try to explain. She just started rearranging the narrative, telling anyone who would listen that we had been falling apart for years, and Damien wasn't the reason, just the reality check. I spent the next few days walking through a haze of humiliation, betrayal, and rage. I couldn't focus at work. I kept rehearsing conversations in my head, what I should have said, what I wanted to scream. The worst part? I still missed her. That's the part no one tells you about, when the person who hurt you the most is also the one you instinctively want to call when you're hurting. It's sick. It's confusing. And it's real. But I didn't call her. I didn't respond to her passive-aggressive texts about when she can see the kids. I didn't lash out online. I just endured. Because I knew the storm wasn't over. It was just warming up. It didn't take long for Claire to show her true colors, again. Within 48 hours of moving out, she was already trying to regain control. Not of me, but of the narrative. She texted me. "We should probably tell the kids we're separating soon, but let's keep it neutral. They don't need the details." Neutral. As if she hadn't just detonated a grenade inside our marriage and walked away without blinking. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because if I said anything in that moment, it would have been cruel. And unlike her, I still had to be the one who kept the emotional ground stable for our children. Instead, I called a lawyer. A good one. I explained everything: the affair, the power dynamics, the therapist's involvement. My lawyer paused after I told her Damien was our licensed couples counselor, and then she asked the question I hadn't even considered yet. "Did he document any of this in your sessions?" And just like that, we had a direction. She explained that Damien's license could be at serious risk. What he did wasn't just immoral, it could be illegal, depending on how the relationship developed and whether Claire was considered a patient under state law. The ethics violation alone was enough to open an investigation. I was shocked. I'd been too wrapped in heartbreak to even think about professional repercussions. But hearing that, it gave me the smallest flicker of power back. I wasn't just some clueless, abandoned husband. I was the victim of a professional betrayal. So I started collecting. Every text. Every session receipt. The signed intake forms that listed us both as clients. Screenshots of her messages to Damien. Notes from our shared Google Calendar, where therapy sessions were marked, even the ones I never attended. My lawyer also advised me to start documenting everything. Who had the kids? When? How often? Every drop-off, every missed call, every passive-aggressive message. And then, as if on cue, Claire fired the first real shot. She sent a formal email, CCing me and my lawyer, requesting joint custody. Not just of the kids, but of our home. That's when I knew, this wasn't just about love or regret anymore. She was digging in. She wanted control, appearances, and access to everything she thought was hers. The kicker. She wrote. I hope we can handle this amicably, for the sake of the kids. The same woman who gaslit me for months, emotionally abandoned our family, and slept with our therapist, was now preaching amicability. I kept it professional. I let my lawyer respond. But inside, I was done playing nice. Because this wasn't just about a marriage anymore. It was about protecting my children, my home, and my dignity. So yeah, I lawyered up. And if I had to, I was prepared to bring everything to light. Even if it meant taking down Damien with her. Once the legal wheels started turning, everything changed. Claire went from distant and guilt-ridden to calculating and polished, like a switch had flipped. She showed up at the school one day unannounced to pick up the kids, even though we had agreed, verbally, that they'd stay with me until we reached a formal arrangement. She smiled to the teachers like nothing had happened, gave me a cold, tight nod when I arrived, and drove off before I could speak to her. Later that night, my daughter asked if we were fighting because Mommy said I was trying to steal them. Those were her words, from Claire, filtered through a child's mouth. That stung more than I can describe. Claire didn't just want shared time, she wanted to rewrite the story. In her version, she was the enlightened woman trying to move on peacefully, and I was the emotionally unstable husband lashing out from a place of insecurity. She even submitted a brief through her lawyer suggesting that I had anger issues and difficulty managing stress, subtly hinting that maybe I wasn't emotionally safe for full-time custody. It was infuriating. Not just because it was a lie, but because she knew the damage those kinds of words could do in court. She knew me better than anyone, which made the betrayal that much sharper. She wasn't throwing wild accusations, she was picking out the soft spots in my history, twisting them just enough to sound plausible. My lawyer advised me to stay calm, avoid reacting emotionally, and let the documentation speak. That's when I submitted everything I had, the messages between her and Damien, the timeline, the therapy records, the receipts, even character references from my colleagues and the kids' school counselor. It felt humiliating to lay my life bare like that, but I had to play defense, not just for myself, for the kids. Claire, on the other hand, kept up the performance. She began posting carefully crafted images on social media, her with the kids, captions about resilience and new beginnings, vague statements meant to garner sympathy from people who didn't know the full story. I stayed silent. I didn't clap back or post receipts. I stayed focused on the only thing that mattered, stability for our children. Behind the scenes, I heard through a mutual friend that Damien had quietly stepped down from practice. No announcement, no farewell posts, just gone. Whether it was fear of an ethics review or shame, I don't know. Part of me hoped he'd be held accountable, but honestly, he wasn't even the one I was angriest with anymore. Claire was the one who opened the door, who let him in, who lied over and over again, to me, to our kids, to herself. The custody hearings were long and tense. Claire maintained her image, poised, well-dressed, eloquent. But every time the judge asked a direct question, I could see the cracks. She danced around timelines. Her version of events never quite lined up. When her lawyer tried to downplay her relationship with Damien, my attorney countered with direct contradictions, dates, names, messages. In the end, the judge didn't need much more. He ruled in favor of joint legal custody, but primary physical custody remained with me. Claire would get scheduled visitation, including weekends and alternating holidays. I wasn't looking to punish her. I just wanted the truth to count for something. And in that moment, it did. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, clarity. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Co-parenting would be its own hell, no doubt. But for once, the lies didn't win. After the custody ruling, things became eerily quiet, not peaceful, just still. The kind of silence that comes after an explosion, when the smoke is still in the air and you're waiting to see what else collapses. Claire didn't fight the decision. She didn't even try to appeal. For a while, she played the role of the wounded mother doing her best to adjust. She picked up the kids when she was supposed to. Smiled at school events. Sent overly formal texts asking about homework or drop-offs. Always signed off with short, clipped sentences like she was writing HR memos, not speaking to the father of her children. She never once apologized. But slowly, the image she was working so hard to maintain started to crack. At first, it was small things. The kids came home once saying she'd taken a phone call from a hotel while they were eating dinner. Another time, our son mentioned that Mom's new friend slept on the couch over the weekend. I didn't pry, I didn't need to. The reality was obvious. Damien hadn't disappeared, he'd just gone underground. He wasn't practicing anymore, but apparently he and Claire had decided to keep their relationship going. From what I heard later through a mutual acquaintance, he moved in with her not long after the ruling. So there it was. The therapist who was supposed to help us build a bridge was now playing stepdad on alternate weekends. The kids weren't stupid. Our daughter started asking why she had to visit when Mom always looks sad now, and our son would get quiet for hours after coming back from her place. I talked to them, gently. I kept it neutral, no badmouthing, no heavy-handed judgments. I just listened, reassured, and made our home feel like solid ground. Meanwhile, I was finally breathing again. I started going back to the gym. Saw an actual therapist of my own, a real one this time, someone whose professional ethics didn't come with quotation marks. I started having dinner with friends again. Even picked up a hobby I'd long given up, photography. It felt strange at first, doing something for no one but myself. But the most surprising thing was this: I wasn't just healing. I was changing. Not into someone new. Just, someone I hadn't seen in a long time. Claire, on the other hand, began unraveling in slow motion. She started missing pickups. Texted me more frequently with scattered excuses about scheduling mix-ups, or being overwhelmed with work. But the restaurant was no longer her focus. People said she hardly showed up anymore. Damien, I heard, had started consulting privately, but nothing major. He wasn't the golden man she had idolized anymore, just another guy with nowhere else to go. The woman who once stood in our kitchen telling me I didn't support her ambitions had somehow ended up shrinking her world down to this: a man she betrayed her family for, a half-empty apartment, and weekends she used to prove she was still mom material. And still, no apology. No accountability. Only curated Instagram stories with vague affirmations and coffee art. I wasn't waiting for closure. Not anymore. Some wounds don't close clean. Some don't even scab, they just scar. And eventually, you stop picking at them. A few weeks after things started settling into this strange, fractured routine, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year, Rachel, Claire's oldest friend. They'd known each other since college, drifted apart here and there, but always found their way back. Rachel had always been blunt, sharp, and a little too perceptive for Claire's comfort. The message was short and careful. She said she didn't want to get in the middle of anything, but that she thought I deserved to know the full story. We agreed to meet for coffee, neutral ground, no pressure. I was skeptical. I figured maybe she'd tell me some gossip about Damien or confirm what I already knew. I wasn't prepared for what she said. Rachel told me the affair had started months before Claire ever suggested therapy. Before the "we're just growing apart" talk. Before the first session. She had seen Damien and Claire at a bar, not by accident. Claire had invited her, claimed it was a casual meet-up with someone she'd recently connected with, professionally. But Rachel picked up on the chemistry immediately. There was no mistaking it. She said they sat too close. Touched too often. She confronted Claire afterward, who admitted they were exploring something new, but that it was harmless and wouldn't go anywhere. But it did. The therapy suggestion came after they had already slept together. It wasn't a last-ditch effort to save the marriage, it was a calculated move to soften the blow. A way to shift the narrative so that by the time the truth came out, it would look like a breakdown, not a betrayal. Claire had created the whole arc. The discontent, the emotional withdrawal, the staged growth, the selective vulnerability in our sessions, all part of a slow rewrite of history. And I bought it. For months, I genuinely thought I was the one falling short. Rachel apologized. Said she felt sick for staying quiet but had believed Claire when she promised it would end quickly. When it didn't, she backed off, not wanting to be involved. I thanked her. I didn't blame her. Honestly, it was the missing puzzle piece I hadn't known I needed, not for revenge or legal reasons, but for clarity. To know I wasn't crazy. That what I felt, the manipulation, the emotional distancing, wasn't paranoia. It was real. And Claire. She didn't just betray me. She orchestrated a whole performance to ease herself into it. I sat in my car after that coffee meeting for a long time, engine off, just staring through the windshield. Everything made sense now, the way she defended Damien in therapy, how she never got truly angry, just calmly disappointed. She wasn't working through emotions. She was already with him. Everything was damage control. And that, somehow, was the deepest cut of all. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I didn't need to. She had already played all her cards, the lies, the image, the narrative. But now I knew the whole script. And I was done pretending I hadn't seen the strings. I didn't go to Claire's place to scream. I wasn't there to accuse her or throw her choices in her face. I had passed through all of that already. Anger, grief, numbness, I'd felt them all, ridden the full cycle, and now I just wanted one thing, for her to see what she'd really done. Not to me, but to herself. I asked her to meet me outside, where the kids wouldn't hear. She came downstairs in joggers and a cardigan, coffee in hand, looking more tired than usual, not just physically, but worn. Still, she played it calm. Detached. Like she was doing her best impression of someone emotionally evolved. I told her I had spoken to Rachel. For the first time in months, I saw it, the flicker. That tiny, involuntary break in her expression. She didn't speak right away. She just looked past me, like the words themselves had taken the air out of her. I didn't need her confession. I wasn't hoping for tears. I just laid it out, the timeline, the lies, the truth she never thought would surface. I told her that I understood now that therapy wasn't a desperate solution to fix us. It was a cover. A stage. A safe space for her to reframe the ending. She tried to recover. She said people make mistakes, that I'd held on to resentment too long, that she never meant to fall for Damien. That she had tried to come back emotionally, but felt I had already checked out. But the words fell flat. I'd heard every version of this story already, just not from her mouth. What she didn't understand was that I wasn't there for her excuses. I was there to close the book. I told her I was done giving energy to what she broke. That I wasn't her emotional punching bag anymore. That the kids deserved honesty, not curated weekend parenting and passive-aggressive texts. And then I gave her the envelope. Inside was a formal motion, a revision to our custody agreement. Nothing aggressive. Nothing cruel. Just tighter structure. More consistency. Less room for flexibility she no longer earned. She didn't argue. She didn't even ask what changed. She just nodded and said she'd have her lawyer review it. She looked smaller then. Not because she had lost something, but because she'd built her whole new life on a lie she thought would never get caught. And now, the consequences were showing up, quiet and steady, without theatrics. The woman who once stood so tall in therapy, armed with Damien's carefully curated vocabulary and a posture of superiority, now couldn't look me in the eye. I left that meeting feeling lighter than I expected. I wasn't proud. I wasn't vindicated. I was just free. The game was over. She could keep spinning her version to whoever would still listen, but I wasn't in it anymore. Not emotionally. Not legally. Not spiritually. Whatever redemption she might be chasing now, it wouldn't come from me. It's been nearly a year since I found those messages. A year since my marriage ended in the ugliest, quietest way imaginable, not with a fight, not with betrayal shouted through tears, but with silence, manipulation, and a slow dismantling of trust by two people who were supposed to help me heal. So much has changed since then. Claire still sees the kids, though less than the agreement allows. Some weekends she cancels last minute. Other times she picks them up and drops them off without saying much. They seem to sense the shift, the emotional inconsistency, the absence of the mother they once knew. Our daughter, who used to mimic Claire in everything she did, now barely talks about her. Our son, who never used to cry, sometimes asks if Mommy will stop changing her mind. I never answer directly. I just remind them they're safe here, always. Damien? I haven't heard a word. From what I know, he never returned to practicing. He disappeared from the therapy world quietly, no formal complaint, no lawsuit, just a closed office and a reputation left to rot in whispers. I thought about pursuing action against him, and part of me still wonders if I should have. But in the end, I realized he didn't deserve the power of my attention anymore. Claire made her choices. So did I. And now I'm standing in what used to be rubble, only it's not rubble anymore. It's a new foundation. I've rebuilt. I have a home filled with laughter again. I have 2 kids who trust me, not because I promised them the world, but because I show up. I go to therapy, real therapy, alone this time. I've reconnected with old friends. I've found quiet joy in small things, cooking breakfast, finishing a book, going on long walks without my phone buzzing every 5 minutes. I've even started dating again. Slowly. Carefully. But with clarity I never had before. And if you're reading this, wondering if you're crazy, if your gut is lying, if your partner is really that good at hiding things, here's what I'll say. You are not crazy. People who lie well are often great performers, and they hide behind roles that make it hard to see the truth. A wife. A therapist. A protector. A mentor. But titles don't make someone trustworthy. Their choices do. If you feel it, the distance, the rewriting of your reality, the quiet guilt that doesn't belong to you, pay attention. If you're hurting, speak. If you're drowning, swim toward the air, even if it means losing what you thought you couldn't live without. I didn't choose this path. But I survived it. And somehow, I'm better now. Not bitter. Not broken. Just better. That's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't have to be the end of you. Sometimes, it's the beginning.